Hello, welcome to my series on personal political heroes, um, people who I think have influenced my way of thinking, but also the thinking of many others. Um, the one today I want to talk about is an unlikely one on face value, and that's St. Paul, Paul of Tarsus, one of the big figures and writers in the New Testament. And the reason I mention him in a political sense is how he helped change the culture and society around him in a very long term, that it still affects us today. Now, Paul was brought up in the Jewish tradition. He became a Pharisee. He was taught by the learned teacher Gamaliel. And in the emergence of the Christian faith following Christ's death, resurrection, etc., he was very hard against them. Paul was very committed to whatever he did. And he was very passionate what he did. And he saw the Christian faith as an attack on everything he believed in and stood for, an attack on his God, and it had to be nipped in the bud. And he was incredibly zealous. And he was on his way to Damascus to arrest other Christian leaders when, by all accounts, he was struck down and became blind, and said that he had this vision from Christ, asking him why he was persecuting him, why Paul was persecuting Christ. Paul goes to Damascus blind and gets healed by a leading Christian there, and he turns around, becomes a devout Christian, and goes around spreading the Christian message. He makes major missionary journeys into southern Europe, notably in Greece and Italy, possibly Spain, or no, we don't know, and writes a whole load of letters to various Christian communities that still exist today. In the end, according to tradition, he was caught up in the persecution of Christians by the Emperor Nero, and according to tradition, he was beheaded. And as St. Paul, as I read in one account from a Christian author, was in the condemned cell, on human value, it must have looked like that was it. What a life, living close to poverty the whole time, supplementing his income, making tents, reaching out to various Christian, creating communities that are now under severe persecution and attack throughout the empire, and now he's coming to an ignominious end. All is writing just these letters, encouraging, admonishing, changing, and yet in the long term everything changed. His letter writing, his going around, his working among the grassroots influenced many people among the Christian faith. His writings became part of what became the New Testament, and he just reached out in a way that his thinking became a major part. And of course, when Constantine became a Christian and the Christianity became the faith of the Roman Empire towards its end, St. Paul's thinking affected us. So a lot of European thinking on morality, on how to reach out to people, a lot of things were affected by Paul. And Paul's a very controversial figure. He's a very Marmite figure, and he was then, and he's looked back now as such. But Paul, in many ways, was a vulnerable figure. He subsued everything he did to God. Whether you think he was right or not, he's a frequently misunderstood figure. Because he was so hard-hitting in everything he said. You've got to be aware that sometimes he was talking to a people in a culture at the time, or things have got to be looked at in a particular context. And he was just a very passionate figure. He loved God and he genuinely loved people, and that comes across very much. So not only did he influence Christian society, sorry, European society as we know it, and yes, Christian society too. He also gives an indication of how we should be in politics. We should always be among the grassroots. We should always listen to people. Not, okay, yes, people among the grassroots aren't always right. Yes, sometimes listen to people who every fibre in our being tells us they're wrong. But it's important to listen. Listening doesn't mean agreement, but it's important to listen. And Paul taught us well in holding firm, but listening, but being among people.